Known him ever since.
Thank you everybody for coming. I'm going to be really brief. Obviously you know the panel that you came to. It's a Disruptors panel. We're going to talk about innovation and risk-taking and disruption with all of these fine folks who are clearly the experts in this. Just to introduce you to everybody who you probably already know, but Kimball Musk is CEO of the Kitchen Community to my right. will.i.am is musician, entrepreneur, philanthropist. In the far left is Ryan Kavanaugh. He's the founder and CEO of Relativity Media. Down at the end, Abe Birds is head of digital operations at Maverick, and he also does business development at A-Grade Investments. And Nancy Liu is the CEO of Implug and the co-founder of Nanoli Bioscience. So thank you all for participating. Let's just start like very big picture. What do you see as disruptive about the businesses that you're involved in or have been involved in, and what's disruptive about your approach as an entrepreneur, in Abe's case, as an investor? And we can start just, how about right at the end?
Oh, I'm first?
You're first. Your first step, Ryan. Let's hear it.
So for me, you know, we came into the film business in 2003, 2004. We're just having our 10th year anniversary, and eventually expanded into other forms of media. But the whole principle was, if you look at the film business, other than us really, still today, virtually every other studio is about 100 years old, somewhere between 1915 and 1929, and a lot of the principles that the studios still run on are 100-year-old principles. So, you know, you look at, just as a key example, and I could do this for every division, but just as one, in distribution, which is basically booking, marketing, and collecting money. Booking theaters, collecting money, and holding the theaters. So other studios probably have about 100 to 200, maybe 300 people to do that. There's 50,000 theaters approximately in the United States. 6 distributors own those 50,000 theaters. So we have about 20 people doing the same thing because at the end of the day, there's literally six relationships that you need in order to properly book and hold theaters. And yet the studios have been the same way for 100 years or 60 years. And, you know, 25, 30 years ago, there were 60,000 theater owners. You needed a lot of people. And we end up doing, we hold theaters longer, we book at the same rates, and we collect at the same rates. So the whole principle was looking at this antiquated, kind of 100-year-old system that people think has this magic to it that nobody can enter into, you know, the movie business and movie distribution, and applying principles that are basic economic principles, which in this world becomes a disruption because that hasn't been true for studios until now. And then we turned that into television and applied, you know, not the same, but a similar principle of looking at antiquated systems and how do we change them. Sports, so we're now the second largest sports agency, fashion, music, and kind of things that are all facing the same legacy issues. So,
okay. And Will, what about you? And also, maybe you could tell us what's on your wrist.
So which one do you want me to go first?
What is disruptive about the entrepreneurial things you're involved with, whether it's the education aspect or the consumer product aspect, or I know some of the producing that you've done. What do you see as innovative there? And then also, you have a very good example on you right now. So
like, music allows you to go out and have conversations with, you know, depending on how successful your music is, you know, a vast demographic of people. So you have, in my case, families. So 60-year-old people that have 30-year-old sons and daughters, and those sons and daughters have 9-year-old kids. And they all come to the Black Eyed Peas show. And then whenever there's a natural disaster, they call us to go and bring awareness and raise money for things that are happening in the world. And so, you know, when I went to, on my birthday, I went to Indonesia, Banda Aceh, to do tsunami relief. And I realized that there's tsunamis every day in hoods in America, especially the ghetto that I come from. A tsunami of, you know, no opportunity, a tsunami of debt, a tsunami of no education, a tsunami of crime, tsunami of, you know, blacks and Latinos in prison. And I noticed that there's no resolution, right? Because it's not in your face, right? So I took it a point to take it in my own hands to change the ghetto that I came from. And it really doesn't make sense that, you know, where I went to school, Palisades, that we were talking about, like, we graduated the same year. He went to Brentwood. I went to Brentwood Science Magnet in Palisades. Per student, a kid gets $11,000 to $12,000 for their education. Well, if I would have stayed in Boyle Heights, my education investment would be $6,000. So the reason why people don't perform well is because the investment is low. So I just wanted to take it in my own hands and see a collapse. We see a collapse every day, but we all just wait for the cavalry to come, right? And we always want to point fingers on whose fault it is, and we forget that we have elbows, and the elbow will give you the ability to point at yourself. So I wanted to, point at myself for the reason why Boyle Heights is the way it is. So my whole, passion is to change my neighborhood. It's hard, you're going to slip and you're going to fall, but if your heart's in the right place and you're committed, it's a hard task. And so when I talk to the kids in my neighborhood, I'm like, look, guys, you're already set up to fail. They've already wrote you off. As a matter of fact, the private sector is invested in prisons right around, the vicinity, just miles out. You already are a business. You're going to go to prison, and that's big business. It's already set up. It's funny, but it's real. So the only way for you to change it is if you take responsibility for yourself, because nobody's going to come and help you. There was a movie called Waiting for Superman. Superman's not coming. He's not even real. So unless you choose to be that Superman and you do super things and commit yourself, so is that disruption or is that eruption, right? Is that erupting inside of me to be that, to take that responsibility, right? So that's, the music allows you to see yourself differently when people are looking at you, right? Because you're singing songs you wrote. You're not an actor playing somebody else's role that they wrote on a script. So there's only a couple artists that come around every so often that have purpose. So, even though I write songs that are, sometimes I write songs about stuff that are like, where's the love? And sometimes I write songs that are just about, let's have a good time. Like, I Got a Feeling. But, I choose to keep that conversation active. And then more importantly, the STEM conversation, when I tell kids, hey, look, go to college, but don't just go to college to, acquire debt. Go to college with a STEM skill set so that when you graduate college, you're not looking for a job, you can create jobs. Because tomorrow is totally different. 20 years from now, my phone is smarter than a 7-year-old, right?
And so's your phone on your wrist.
Yeah, so, there's this thing called democratization of everything right now where everyone has the ability to bring things to the market if you choose to do that. So here's a case of something that's on my wrist that, I found a team in Bangalore and Singapore, funded it, right? Because most people in my world were waiting for somebody to give us money to sell their stuff, right? We wait for like a $5 million check to endorse somebody's project and help them build a $1 billion brand, and we just got $5 million and some visibility to sell a single in a day and age where they're asking you to use your Twitter and Instagram account to promote their stuff. It's weird. So I'm like, okay, so if I'm going to ask you to follow me, I'm going to end the sentence with, and here's where we're going. Because people are following folks and they don't even know where they're going. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going to use my money that I earned from music and do philanthropy of my neighborhood and commit to tell these kids, here's why you need a STEM education. You too can bring consumer electronics to market. Look, I did. Look, I don't need to pair it to a phone. It is the phone. Right? Here, check that out, bro. This is crazy. It's nuts if you think about it. 10 years ago, in 2004, Black Eyed Peas launched iTunes and iPods. And here, 10 years later, I got something on my wrist. This is nuts. This is crazy. That we made.
It's going to be at market this summer, right? What's it called?
In the summer? You got to leave certain things for when you're partners. I don't want to
This is a great opportunity. Everyone is here, influential people. They want to hear all about it.
Yeah, they'll hear about it. Only reason there's giants out there in the world that have buckets of money. I'm just a little guy that's doing something disruptive. And I want to wait to the right time to tell the plan behind why it's going to be successful. And I want to mine the giants, right? So David, when he threw that rock, right? He threw that rock, and the speed at which the rock hit Goliath in a part that was vulnerable, it was very strategic. Right? So I don't want to just start throwing rocks. I want to be strategic with my rock.
Very diplomatic, and poetic. All right. Kimball, obviously your career has been so multifaceted, and what you're doing currently is so different than what you were doing at the beginning of your career, but you're applying disruption and innovation in many of the same ways, and you also have an education component too. Tell us what's so disruptive about your life and career.
Yeah, I think I was going to say something else, but then I was sitting with Will just before this, and I asked him when he first started making music, and he said it was 14, 15 years old. And I was like, what did I do when I was 14 or 15? And then I thought about, how do I tie this back to disruption? And so what happened when I was 14, it was me and my brother and two of my cousins, we created an Easter egg business. And the thing about Easter eggs, you can all buy them in stores. You can do that for many, many decades, at least since I was born. But very few times are 4 cute little kids selling Easter eggs. And we went door to door. We made the Easter eggs, and we went door to door. And the average Easter egg would sell for effectively $1. And we would not sell the Easter eggs for less than $10. And we just wouldn't. I mean, we just made that decision. And it wasn't maybe not in the world very disruptive, but to the local grocery store manager, I tell you, we destroyed his Easter egg business for that summer. But it was for us, disruption has just been from the beginning. We take a very simple approach. I take a very simple approach. What needs to happen, whether back in the 90s, we worked on Yellow Pages, and Yellow Pages today is gone. Back then, it was a hugely established business, but the simplest solution is to provide it online. And so that creates a lot of disruption. All the way through to today, I work in education, and we have a very, very simple solution for schools that we looked at, what is the solution that would work for schools? We build learning gardens, which are these outdoor classrooms that are edible schoolyards. And they function as a play space for the kids. They function for a teaching space for the teachers. They'll last 20 to 30 years, and it's just the simple solution. And it creates this enormous amount of disruption. But frankly, from our perspective, we're just doing the simple solution. And what happens over many, many years is the simple solution gets completely lost. And you obviously can see that with Tesla, where the simple solution, amazingly, 100 years ago was electric cars, and it just got completely lost in the discovery of oil and the gasoline engine creation, and some amazing entrepreneurs that set us in that direction. But frankly, it was not the simple solution; it was the very complicated solution. And Tesla's simply been a way. We just come in. Here's the simple solution. And it does work, and it creates an enormous amount of disruption.
What is simple about SpaceX, about sending rockets into space and those that land back on the ground? I mean, that is not simple.
Look, rocket science, yes.
Rocket science is not simple.
But actually, it's a lot simpler than what everyone else does.
Really?
If you look at the number of people on a launch pad with SpaceX, or launch area, you're not actually allowed on the launch pad when you launch. Please, yeah. So we have 20 to 30 people. And the nearest competitor has 300 people. We don't even know what they do, but they're keeping themselves busy. So they're creating extremely complex solutions to what is fundamentally a challenging and very technical problem, but still a simple problem.
And Nancy, you have 2 startups. They're so different. One has created a solution that allows vaccines to not need refrigeration. The other is a technology that I can't even really explain. It's disruptive to the sign industry. It's software-based signs. It's totally innovative. How have you disrupted in such different areas? And I don't know if you're even 30. How old are you?
I'm 23.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm almost 24, so I'm getting into my mid-20s, so I feel old.
Well,
Well, I have to say, I mean, the business that I started, I wasn't the brains behind it. It was rather I found somebody that was way smarter than me who was an expert in this field. And so so my biotech company, I literally met my co-founder at a bar because I thought he was cute. And so I started talking to him. And then, of course, I find out he's a world famous biochemist. So that was really, really cool. And we started working together, and both of us had come and grew up in rural places in the world. So I grew up in rural China. I didn't get vaccines until I came to, a lot of the vaccines until I came to the US because there's a problem called refrigeration. You have to refrigerate vaccines. And when we started developing our technology, we said, okay, we can look at different types of refrigerators that are more efficient, but why not just eliminate refrigeration entirely? And so that's what we did. The research that we've been doing has been going on for about 7 years, and we came into a point and we took existing research that was already completed, basically, took one of the compounds, manipulated the compound so that it became a chemical that could allow vaccines to survive without refrigeration. And that was right around the time I was about to graduate college. I had a mentor who said, instead of staying in the biotech space, you should go into software and you should do something that will grow a little faster. So then I did that. I went and hired people that were really, really smart who have run biotech companies before. And then they run the biotech company now. It's based out of Boulder, Colorado. And so then I graduated. And yeah, so go
That's where I live.
And I said, okay, I'm totally open to another industry, but I want to do something that's really different. And for me, it doesn't matter what industry it is, but rather I want to be doing something that is very different. And so I met my co-founder, David, for Implug. And he said, hey, have you ever heard of an industry called digital signage? It is the most unsexy business you can ever get into. And so I said, I'll look into it, and went and attended an industry called the Digital Signage Expo, where all these digital signage companies come together. And I went there, and the average age of folks there were 55 years old, and I said, this is a great industry to disrupt. And so for us, the technology that we built is changing how digital signage operates. Right now, you see digital signage throughout the Milken Institute, and I bet it costs them a lot of money to implement all of the digital signage, including the ones here. So our business, Implug, is Chromecast for enterprise. We have a little device, you can connect it into any kind of digital display, and it allows you to power all sorts of content, interactive content on these displays. For us, it's transforming one-way communication with screens. Right now, all of these screens that you see, they're one-way communication. But with our software, you can convert any of the existing screens into two-way communication. And that's the future for all digital technology in the physical world. And so it's been about 2 years since we started the company, and already shopping malls, restaurants, gyms, hotels are replacing their old digital signage software with ours. And for them, it costs them very, very little. In fact, we're saving them costs. So for us, it's about the business model and it's about the technology, where in order for our customers to change into using our technology, it actually doesn't cost them anything. And that was very important for us.
Isn't one of your signs nearby the Milken conference?
Yeah, so if you go to the Beverly Hills Porsche, because I know many of you will just do that in your free time and buy yourself a Porsche, you can go down the street to Beverly Hills Porsche and you will see our software in their showroom.
And Abe, give us the investor perspective, because with A-Grade Investments, which is the VC fund founded by Ashton Kutcher, Guy Osery, Ron Burkle, it's invested in companies like Spotify, Uber, and Airbnb. Can you talk about what you look for and how you evaluate disruptive companies and how you measure them?
Yeah, I think our fund is very unique. We're in a unique position because we're here in Los Angeles, so we're not, up in San Francisco, and we're not in New York. So we have to we use those as strengths, and our background in entertainment, we use that as a strength as well. So when we're looking at a company, I think we look for the qualities and traits in a company, a prospective company rather, that we might invest in from kind of our experience as being, I think we work very hard. We're hustlers. This is not an easy business to kind of rise up from. So that's something that and you have to have a clear vision, and you have to really know. You have to kind of see past the distractions that come up, and I think any startup and any entrepreneur would face. And we face those as well on the entertainment side. So we look for a kinship there. and kind of some common ground. And we really use that as a gut check to kind of move forward on an investment or what have you. And we also, I think one thing that can be, as LA's kind of tech scene has been, I guess, burgeoning and growing for the last, let's say, 10 years, especially in the last like 3 to 5 years, or maybe in the last 2 to 3 years, I guess you could say, if you look at some of the social apps that have kind of come to fruition and kind of grown to a critical mass, we don't really look at hype, and we don't really, which is, I think, something that in the entertainment industry you can get distracted from as well, and kind of looking at that, again, that clear vision of where, okay, in 3 months and 6 months, okay, I get it, you're growing, you got featured in the App Store, that's great, but what comes after that? And maybe it's not necessarily the business model, because that might come if you're just trying to grow your user base, but what does that look like? So those are kind of some guiding principles, and I think for us, other guiding principles are, we look for companies that are obviously disruptive, and also where we can be helpful, and I think that also comes down to our strengths and our, I guess, again, our core competency of our connectivity and our network, and being able to really, push a company farther in a different way than they can do for themselves. I think, especially, Ashton, who's part of our fund, and people will mention him. It's like, oh, a company will come in, they're like, oh, well, if Ashton would just tweet about it, then that would really help our company. And that's I think that's probably, if that's how a conversation starts, it's probably the end of the conversation. We don't really, that shouldn't be the guiding principle. That one tweet, that's not going to change your company necessarily. But I guess a vision and a great product will, and we can help support that maybe through some of the channels that we have access to.
One thing that sticks out to me is a lot of you kind of have a very conscious point of view where you're going into something to disrupt it. Nancy, you referred to that. How do I disrupt this industry? Do you think that is necessary, that you have to be very conscious about innovating and disrupting an industry? Or do you think that sometimes it happens by accident because you're coming from the outside with a different point of view into a new industry, or just maybe you just have an idea that just is inherently disruptive and you don't even realize it? What do you guys think?
I mean, I think everything I've been part of has been just creating a great product. And then if what you're doing is interesting in a traditional business, you're going to totally disrupt that business. But adding value in a traditional business is extremely hard. And so I would say that it's not necessarily by accident, but if you look at a very simple problem like, our kids are just not eating well. Now there's complexity there, but it's a simple problem, and you just go, well, I'm going to create something that makes kids eat better. And if it works, it will totally disrupt the industry.
I think it also depends on the industry. I mean, so for us in the media business, I mean, kind of spanning advertising, media, sports, looking at all as one and the same. I mean, most of those are 80, 100-year-old businesses that have very established institutions behind it. And so if you're going to do anything original in the business, you're going to have to disrupt. And I think the word disruption is a little bit of a misnomer, because disruption is innovation, right? And when we think back and we look at, like, okay, well, who are the innovators, in history? I mean, it's the people that we think of as the establishments. It was, Edison, it was Einstein, it was, J.P. Morgan, it was Ford, it was, it was, I mean, all of the kind of the original industry builders that today stand for, like, institutional and large. I mean, these guys were breaking models, and so and breaking industries and trends. And I think if you're, I mean, at least in our industry, and I say this all the time outwardly, and I was definitely public enemy number one while I was building the business, because I would say, our industry is filled with people that don't want to see change. They love this box they live in. There's a lot of fat in it, and they want to stay in the box and they don't want it to change. And so we were coming in saying we had to do something different. We've got to break it. In fact, I brought this just for fun. This is all over our office. This is our mantra, and it's everywhere in our offices. And it literally, other than falling, if it'll stay up, basically says, in order to do it differently, you got to disrupt. To make it, break it, reinvent it. And I think, for us, when I look at any industry, I think that has any kind of deep rooting, you're going to have to create disruption. I mean, you're going to have to create innovation. And if it's new and original, it's going to be looked at as crazy, because nobody's thought about it before. So you got to be willing to push the limits.
So what does it take? Oh, yeah, let's.
I think, the state of culture right now, whether it's, technology, yesterday, it's all in clay. It's in clay state, to where those with ideas can remold it. And to your point, it wasn't called disruption 10 years ago. It was called innovation. And the Bay, Silicon Valley, we have to be very careful with disrupting just to disrupt. Right? There's certain things you shouldn't disrupt. Like, you shouldn't disrupt someone's marriage, no matter how bad it is.
Depends if it's innovative, it's okay.
Right? What I'm saying is, like, there's certain things you shouldn't disrupt. Well, let's take like all these companies that get sold for billions of dollars and no way to make money. That's scary, actually. Right? They put a valuation on a company that's worth X amount of billions of dollars, and there's really no way for it. They haven't told us how it's going to make money. So for me, that scares me a little bit, because if our mortgage crisis is the reason why we're in this mess now, just imagine what a big bubble of business that we put value on a company, and there's no way to really make money to the point to match what they say it's worth. That's scary to me. Imagine you have like 1,000 of those businesses. That could be crippling in the name of disruption.
Right, I know. Mortgage finance was really innovative at one point.
So we have to be careful of how much we ride this bandwagon of disruption, because it doesn't indicate who the customer is. So innovation, when you innovate, right, so first it was invention. Then someone was like, you know what, I don't really want to invent right now. That's going to take a lot of freaking discipline, so I'm just going to innovate. I'm going to fix what was broken. And so innovation, you don't have to create anything, you just improve. And then there's the new guy who's really not improving. He just wants to interrupt the conversation where it doesn't make you mad for interrupting, but doesn't really add value to what the conversation is going to continue to be. It's not a sustained conversation. So we have to be careful that disruption or interrupting a conversation that was monetized is sustainable in the sake of this new verb in society called disruption, right? Right.
No, I think disruption is real. I think if you look at the Yellow Pages, I mean, I remember talking to Yellow Pages guys back in '95, and there is no way they were going to change without totally destroying their business, and that's disruption to the extreme. But actually, that business needed to be destroyed because it was not the right way to do it.
The Yellow Pages is awesome. Yeah, that's a good one. Yellow Pages, right? But let's take Kodak. Kodak, you took a picture. You went and printed that picture. You put that picture in your house. Now, something disrupted that. It's called Instagram. It takes your memories and puts it in somebody else's cloud. It ain't even yours no more.
Yeah, but obviously the consumer wants that. I mean, the only reason it happens...
is led to believe they want that.
I don't think so. I mean, I agree on the Yellow Pages front. I agree that, I mean, look at the media business, our industry. It needed to be blown up. I mean, you know, if you look at any studio, even still today, they have so many layers of fat. They have thousands of people that don't actually need to be there, and there's a lot of waste. And you know what? It needed someone to come in, and you know, we were fought every step of the way. We were being told, you know, you're never going to be able to change it. You're going to fail. You're going to fail. I mean, every room I went into, I was told, oh, all those guys say you suck. And honestly, like now, I hear more and more that, oh, parent companies are putting pressure on us to actually see if we can cut overhead. And, you know, they should. I mean, they spend $100 million a year on developing scripts and projects that'll never see the light of day. I mean, talk about waste. They weren't going to change that unless somebody else came in and said,
no, I'm talking about as far as when you disrupt film for vapor algorithms that take pictures and no way to really determine how it makes money. We still don't know how it makes money in 2000 right now.
I agree with that, but clearly consumers want it. Meaning they're preferring, if they wanted to take pictures and put them on the wall, they'd do that. Instead, they're saying, we like better to take pictures and put them online where everybody can view them, because that's the purpose why we have pictures. At least that's what they've decided today.
I think you're also simplifying the problem, though. I mean, it wasn't easy for Instagram to do that, right? I mean, there was a camera on the phone for a little while until Instagram actually, they reached critical mass. So and there are companies now that are doing that. You can take your Instagram photos and you can print them, but no one really cares to do it because none of those companies are billion-dollar companies. I mean, they do okay, but I think that you know, it's not an easy thing to innovate or disrupt. It's tough, right? You can't just do something different and then people flock to it. I think, to Ryan's point, it's like people flock to it because they want it, right? And it's Pandora's box. Like, you could take, you know, the music industry, you could take, you know, Napster as an example or something like that, or Spotify now with streaming, and it's like, oh, well, that really ruined a business model, which is true, but it was something that obviously the consumer wanted, or else they wouldn't flock to it.
Well, the music industry, let's just go back just 1938 right quick. Our industry is based off of technology. There's a company called GE who had this little side project called RCA, and that became our gramophone, which is our Grammy Award now. So now we have this award every year. It's like, wow, you 7-time Grammy Award winning. That's hardware. It's a different type of phone, gramophone. Now we have iPhones. So our industry was disrupted only because we didn't realize what business we were in. We forgot we were hardware. Right? How does Sony lose? They're Spider-Man and movies. They're freaking music. They're freaking hardware. Like, how do they lose?
But that's perfectly to the point. I don't know who made it, but the point that was made earlier, which is if an industry is in need of change, you know, if an industry isn't like the Yellow Pages, that's what happened in the music business. They could have owned it, but instead they fought the innovation.
No, they didn't know. I sat in meetings. We did not, the CEOs of the companies never realized that we were hardware. And then here comes Beats.
But that's not, the disruption was iTunes.
No. iTunes, when it comes to like the #1 selling song on iTunes, I know how much money that is. I know that, I got a feeling it's still the #1 song on iTunes. I know how much money that is in your pocket. I also know how much Beats is. So when I'm talking about like monetizing and disruption, we have to be careful to not just hop on this bandwagon of disruption without a clear view on how it makes money or who benefits from it. So soon there's going to be a tidal wave, a tsunami of people like, yo, we need to get paid. You're not getting paid.
I think what's going on in the music business, not that I'm in the music business, but I do believe that there's a new game going on that I don't understand. I don't think the music industry understands, and we'll figure that out in any point in time, because people want to listen to your music. They want to listen to other artists. We want to listen to music more and more and more.
Music should be free.
It could be free, it could be paid for, but the point is it will happen, and the established industry is probably just playing the wrong game. So I love the Tesla analogy, because we have some phenomenal car companies out there. Tesla's not a car company. We're a computer with wheels. We have many, many ways of making that work, and there's so many things that can happen when you're a computer with wheels. There's a great analogy to the iPhone. You know, if you look at the Tesla versus a great car out there, your favorite car, it's like comparing an iPhone to a push-button cell phone. They both make calls, and that's where it stops. And so when you disrupt, you go in and you actually play a different game. And it's not to say that the existing players aren't very good at playing the old game. It's just not the same game. And I don't know what the solution is in music, but I know there's going to be more and more music being played and listened to over the next, however long we survive as a human species, because we're just getting better at getting it out there. But I do know that the current players in the music industry don't actually know what that game is.
But that's that's exactly my point. So what I think the same thing's happened in the movie business is going to happen more, which is you have these old established industries. Music, you know, had a stronghold, thought nobody can take it from us. There was clearly the capability to say, hey, we want to make this available, and we actually want to control this distribution pipeline. Instead, they shut it out and fought it, and someone said, well, we got a better way. You don't have to walk into a store and buy a DVD and have 50% margins. You can actually, you don't have to buy an entire album. You can buy whatever you want right now and put it into a machine. And that was available, but the well-established industry said, we don't want it because we don't understand it. It just happened in the film business. The studios could have owned digital. They fought it and fought it and fought it because DVD was so lucrative for them. And instead, in comes Netflix. And Netflix now owns that entire industry. You know what? Netflix is just announcing that it's going into it's making its own movies direct to Netflix for $20 to $60 million, and it's doing the same exact thing that the music business did, where all of a sudden, for $9.99, you're getting original movies, you're getting all your distribution, you're getting all your content, and you don't have to use the movie studios anymore. And it's these guys if you fail to innovate, really, if you fail to look forward and give consumers there's always going to be better. You can always do more. If you look 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the average S&P company lasted 35 to 40 years. Today, they last 9 years. That means that these companies get big, and they stop thinking that they have to to change and re-challenge and reinvent, and they go away.
I want to make sure we get Nancy in here with your thoughts. Did consumers drive your businesses? Was there a real sense of kind of shaking up a very established industry? What are your thoughts on some of the things being said?
To add on to what everyone said, I think in the end, disruption is the ability for a company to add more value to the end user than its competitors. That's as simple as it is. For what InPlug does for our software, there's lots of digital signage software providers, but they didn't focus on the end user. How they monetized is they said, okay, we're going to put all these digital screens everywhere and we're going to show ads on it. And they focused it only on one of the stakeholders, advertisers. For us, we said, actually, we believe the end user are the viewers, the people that actually experience the screen. So we said, we're going to make the screen as beautiful and fun as it can be. And so because of that, locations actually pay us software subscription for our services, which is just unheard of in the digital signage industry. All these other digital signage operators, they put up all the cost of putting these digital signs up. They pay for the software, they pay for the internet, and they just make money from advertising. For us, we totally switched it around where locations started paying us. And we didn't even realize this actually. When we started putting our screens in, we were doing it for free. We were actually doing the same kind of business model as the other companies. And then suddenly all these hotels and restaurants and office buildings came to us and said, hey, I saw your screen at my friend's office building. How do we get one of your screens? How much is your screen? And we said, holy crap, we can make money by selling this product actually to the locations. And we can make way more money doing that. And on top of that, we're still making money from all the advertising that's showing on the screen. And so in the end, the reason why all of these businesses are choosing to use our software, it's not necessarily that we have a different product. It's software but we made it easier. And we also switched our business model so that it's a much more sustainable and lucrative business than our competitors.
Would you agree with that with regard to Maverick, Abe, in terms of the kind of clients that you guys attract?
Yeah, I mean, currently, you take our two biggest clients, U2 and Madonna, and you think of them, and obviously they're artists that have been around for 25, 30 years. So, you're always trying to reinvent and innovate. I mean, and especially in entertainment, it's almost like a moving target sometimes when you're trying to, so you have a new album, you have a new tour, it's like, how do you recapture that audience every time, which can be a problem. And, before the digital age, I mean, those things were harder, right? And now we have systems to be able to actually remarket and retarget fans or what have you, and capture them and continue that conversation beyond just an album cycle or a tour cycle. So yeah, I mean, our artists use all those different mediums. I mean, everything from whether it's an Instagram, whether it's a Facebook, whatever. I mean, it's not. I mean, those things change. I mean, I remember when I used to work at Sony, and I remember when MySpace was the rage, right? And artists were taking their websites and redirecting them to MySpace, and I was like, why are you doing that? And it's like, oh well, because we want to get lots of friends on MySpace. And I was like, well, you realize that you don't own any of that information. Like, you don't. If MySpace disappears tomorrow, then how will you ever find those fans again? And it never really occurred to them that would happen, and that these things are kind of cyclical. And so we're trying to come up with, I guess, better approaches than just relying on some of these third-party companies. While yes, you have to for certain things, and they are great marketing tools. We're definitely thinking forward, and even leveraging on the tech side where those investments are coming from. We get to see a lot of these companies early and apply them to our artists. So, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say specifically what technology would do that because everything's moving so quickly. But I think it's more about not just relying on one, but having your kind of army of tools and picking them through each campaign in a smart way.
One thing I wanted to touch on, Ryan, you were talking about how in order to disrupt, you have to take on a lot of entrenched interests that don't want change. And you can have opposition in that way. That can lead to regulations that didn't exist when you started your business. That's an issue. There are just so many issues with disrupting that feel like you have to be a certain kind of person. I don't know, like have more moxie or bravery than the average person. What are your guys' feelings on that? Because I can tell you, I'm probably never gonna I would never create something myself like that. Like I was not selling Easter eggs when I was, little. Like how much of it is like your nature versus something that can be learned or embraced?
Like when you're using something and you say, I wish it did this. Or imagine if it did this. You probably have those conversations with your friends and your family. But now, when I said the democratization of everything, now that person that wished a certain feature was on it can actually make that happen if they surround themselves with the right people. Right? So how I was able to do this was that very core was, man, I wish this happened. Right? So when I talked about like memories and owning your memories, like there's a big void in culture right now when it comes to data. Right? Right now as we sit in this room, where's your dental records? Do you have that on you? Does anybody have their health records on them? Right? We are here to live. And we are all conscious, we want to be healthy. But where is proof that you're healthy? Do you have it in your wallet, in your bag right now? Where is it at? Oh, only when you get sick is when you need to find it. Right? In theory, we should have it all because we're healthy right now. And I want people to know that I'm healthy. So when I started thinking of this, I started thinking about all those things. I was like, wow, that means I got to get this, I got to go here, I got to go there. But more importantly, I got to empower people with data that they don't realize is powerful. Right? Instagram is Instagram because they have your face. WhatsApp is WhatsApp because they have all your contacts and your conversations. But do you keep them? Right? I have my memories. And my memories and my knowledge of how what I experience determines if I'm going to be successful in life. Because I could have conversations with people and they'd be like, I value your perspective, your persona, things that you've gained through life. But in a digital world, where is that stuff?
But was it always in your nature to go, I wish that things were more like this, and I'm going to do that?
Yes, it's called songs. I wish that song was kind of like, oh, I'm just going to write my own. I wish I could have a song like freaking Earth, Kool and the Gang, every wedding and bar mitzvah, they're going to play my song. I'm going to give me one of those joints. So I wrote I Got a Feeling. I wanted a freaking celebration.
What about you guys?
I think I think music is a phenomenal. I'm not a musician, but I've played in bands, but nothing to that level. But one of the great things about being in a band is when you play together and there's 4 or 5 of you in the band. One might write the song, one might sing it, one might play bass, one might play keys. When it comes together, it's just it's magic. Mm-hmm. And I see that in business all the time, and I'm sure all you guys have been part of this at some point in your life. And when you're around people, whether you have that selection of that team, you might have that one person that says, I want a song in the wedding, but you got to have your other players to actually make it all come together. And when that does happen, you truly do create magic. And that's when I see a team that are working on a company, and you can see them clicking, you're like, man, I don't know what they're going to do, but it's going to be big. And you just have to keep watching. And that's the most exciting thing about disruption. And when it comes back to the individuals, yeah, sometimes it's in the nature, but you need a combination of a number of different people to make it all work.
I think also it's I'm sorry, did I interrupt?
No, go for it.
I think that it really does go to a person's almost ability to have really thick skin, and I can say like you think you have it, and then you really you get challenged if you actually do something well. When I was young, I think my parents who are here joke around because I wrote my senior thesis on the legalization of marijuana in a very preppy, very strict school called Brentwood High, and they had to actually go in. They told me you cannot write it, and my parents had to go in and be like, wait, you tell him he can write about anything he wants and freedom of writing, and now he's not allowed to write it, and it was a big deal. And so I think back and go, okay, I was always kind of against the grain, but. Gandhi has my favorite saying, and it's first they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they fight you, then you win. And so when you actually start doing something really well, like when I started Relativity in the beginning, I was ignored and, literally ignored, and you're like, well, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden when they start ridiculing you, it's like, this is really tough, and then you get into the fighting mode, and you're like, Jesus, I like the ridicule better. Like, now they're really fighting me, and then you kind of realize you hit a point, which has only happened to us recently, where it's like, wow, it's not that like they hate me, You know, they were worried that we were actually making a change that they didn't think of. And now, you know, and then you get to a place where you're like, okay, our business model, I think, works better than any other studios. And I understand why they were worried, because we kind of moved things forward in a way that they didn't want to have happen. And so, you know, there was certainly, I remember when a couple articles first came out, I'd call my parents and be like, why are they writing these terrible things about me? And, you know, they were just like, just keep doing what you're doing. And, you know, you gotta be prepared for it. I mean, Nancy is gonna definitely, at her age, she's doing something incredibly disruptive, and she's turning a huge industry on its head, you know?
Thanks, Ryan. Adding to, I mean, Natureverse, I think all of us here, I think we weren't all like when we were like 5 years old. Maybe Ryan, maybe William, but like 5 years old will be like, I'm gonna start a business and it's going to disrupt. I think it was all of us had a personality where we said, I'm just going to do it. I might fail, but that's okay. I think it's more of the almost like a innocence of not worrying what are the consequences of what happens after. When I was in high school, I had co-drafted a legislation that got signed into law in multiple states. And I didn't really think that was, I was just like, oh, that's like, I was 17 at the time, and then I ended up getting this award with Governor Schwarzenegger and Senator John Edwards. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I get a free trip to LA. And that was kind of it. But I went in with the task of saying, hey, you're going to draft this bill and you're going to help it. And it was just like, all right, I'll just do it. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, oh well. And then same in college, it was just like some of these folks here, you know, like Will.i.am, if he has, there's so many people waiting for him to have that next big product, big song, but I bet it doesn't faze him at all. He said, that's okay, like I'll go in. I think what's different is not being afraid to take that risk. I think for me, when I was graduating, I had this great biotech company that was working really well, but I said, I'm going to just start from scratch. And all my co-founders thought the same way, which I thought was really weird. I met my co-founders all within like a 48-hour time period. One of my co-founders was a professional poker player. He was an MIT dropout. And we met each other through Skype, talked for an hour, and I said, okay, I'll take a U-Haul down to LA and let's start Implug together. And that's literally how our company started.
Abe, final words before I open this up to questions in terms of the entrepreneurial spirit, what you see with founders, how you feel in your guys' business?
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback off what you were saying, I think it was also being lucky enough to have someone who would listen. So I think I've had, you know, great mentors and been in situations where, I mean, we were talking about this before, but I guess we're lucky enough to come up in a time where people will actually listen to folks with not as much experience but are outspoken and might maybe understand some emerging technologies better than others. So I don't know. I think it's about having that combination of outspokenness and some, at least some support, some glimmer of support. You know, someone will be like, oh wow, okay, there's something there. Like you haven't refined it, but let me help you a little bit. And you know, that experience when you ask how I would relate that back maybe to some of our companies, and when we listen to a pitch or what have you, it's similar. I mean, you have someone who might be very young or maybe not even in age, but in terms of starting a company, and they don't know what's ahead of them, but they have that we're listening to them, we're supporting them hopefully, and they have that drive, and I think that's really important. Just not not really caring what people say in a way, but using it, or if you do, flipping it and making it a positive, and having that be a driving force to push you forward.
So I see something coming with, if you take Beats, right? There's 2 consumer electronic products that came out of the blue in the past 5 years, right? So before then, you had like your obvious guys, right? The usual suspects, your Sonys, your Samsungs, you had your LGs, you had the guys. But in the past 5 years, you had 2 companies that emerged out of nowhere by coupling content and product. And that's Beats and GoPro. GoPro is hardware, but you create content with it. Beats became jewelry and accessories. So I think tomorrow you're going to see a lot of new entrepreneurs that have a public face and a relationship with people, not consumers, not users, not a brand. A brand, people that brand need cattle or animal, right? So when big companies see people, they look at them as if they're not part of them anymore. So we call them users. So I think tomorrow's big company or a person that has relationships with people that you trust and a surrounding of, you never seen this coupling of an artist with a CTO and a tech guy. You never seen, musician and a coder together. You've never seen that. So when you have like a dude that came from the hood and a guy that came from Bangalore and a guy that came from Singapore and they're all working together, you're gonna see a new type of consumer electronics purposeful company that goes out to empower and encourage people to take on a different task in life. Like, yes, basketball is great, music is awesome, but music coupled with technology is amazing, right? Athletics coupled with technology is amazing, right? And you're gonna see a whole new world, a whole new, when the head of a tech company now is walking on the street, you don't know that guy from Paul. But tomorrow you're gonna identify with him. The same way you identified with Bob Marley when he sung Songs of Redemption, you're like, I feel what you're saying. Because technology is personal, right? It connects us to our families, connects us to our loved ones, gives us the news, right? Songs gave you news. Music right now is pretty much, it isn't what it was intended to be. You're supposed to sing songs, folk songs that made you feel about what was happening in life. It was the news of the time. It was the first social network, music, right? So music and tech coming from someone that you trust and identify with that goes out in the world and does things with purpose, a whole new shit's about to pop the fuck off.
Well, that is a good place to end it and take some questions. This gentleman's hand shot up. Let's hear from, I'm looking at you. Don't look behind you. It was you, yeah. I think we can hear you. I think it might take too long for the mic. We have 8 minutes. So.
One question for Will I Am, one question for the rest of the panel. Most people, well, Bill Gates once said that most people overestimate what they can achieve in a year and underestimate what they can achieve in 5 years. You talked about trust and a digital age where trust is very hard to build when you are using such digital technology. So how do you build trust with your consumer today? And when we look at the next 5 to 10 years, what are the companies that you think outside of your own businesses that will really have a fantastic impact in achieving all the things we talked about in the panel? Who would be your top picks in terms of the companies that you really admire?
Say the last statement again.
The second question is, what companies do you guys all see as in the next 5 to 10 years really kind of being the leaders in disruption outside of your own? But the first question was directed specifically to Will, and it was...
So trust, just being honest, making mistakes and being honest with the mistakes you make, but more importantly, having purpose in life and bringing resolutions for those that need it, and trying and committing yourself to do things not in your community and other communities like it. And if you come from a great community, there's things you can do and people that are waiting for you to help out in. And companies that I feel that are awesome are Tesla. It's like probably the Tesla is and SpaceX is. Sorry, I would say that even if you were in here. Apple is pretty awesome. Even when their iCloud goes down, right, and my emails are there. For some reason, I still root for them. Right? I could be gone to the airport and I can't even get my freaking flight information. I'm like, well, they're probably updating or something, right? But Apple's awesome. That's it, really. Everyone else is cool, but those three are freaking awesome.
And what about the rest of you?
Oh, Beats is amazing.
I put my money on your watch, Ryan's relativity business, SpaceX, Tesla. There we go. We got every industry covered there.
Nancy's Unplug. I think Nancy's industry is going to be, I think there's two industries in general. Now, I mean, her company's obviously amazing in it, and I think, the whole world of marketing and branding is just in huge flux. And I think that the big agencies and branding companies just, again, missed the mark. They tried so hard to keep traditional advertising together that, now finally you have 85% of people TiVoing, not watching, ads, and all of a sudden the brands are like, all right, well, we're going elsewhere. So having digital billboards that can interact with the consumer, I think companies that are going to give brands new innovative ways to connect with consumers will definitely be content owners that have that capability are going to be the next.
I paid him to say that.
Well, I also think it's going to move away from marketing to community. So marketing is when you paid attention to the marketplace, and you paid attention to the marketplace regardless of how it affected the community in a bad way. So we've destroyed communities to where there used to be like sexy hourglass bodies to now just round pulps. And that's, I think, just bombarding of marketing and not paying attention to how it's destroying communities. So brands are going to be forced to be more communicating and not do advertising, but create content to inspire the person of how that company you want to be in their company and how they add to your life. Not advertisement, but how do you add to my life and my community is what brands, I think.
It seems like the simplest way to look at the companies, and I think everybody in here can identify them, which is if you look at everybody on the panel, you can look at things, every product that someone represents on this panel comes from an established industry that a consumer clearly had said, I wish it was done better. And I wish it was done differently. These are old industries. So whether it's Uber, which they were original investors in, and people saying, wow, why can't I get town cars for cheaper? And this is all done through this weird antiquated system where I have to call a taxi and, why can't it be quicker? Or whether obviously it's Nancy with two different industries, obviously, biotech and advertising. Obviously Tesla's, speaks for itself. And, he's wearing, while Will's talking about, non-disruption, he's wearing a technology that disrupts every single cell phone carrier at some of the biggest companies in the world, because they've fought this because they don't want everybody to get rid of expensive cell phones. You put that on your wrist, and he's just taking on all of the cell phone industries. And I think you can just look at those. But I think particularly, frankly, the cannabis industry is going to be the fastest growing thing we see in our lifetime. I'm serious. I think that's going to be the fastest growing we see.
Kimball, what about you? What companies do you have?
Honestly, I like to look at companies that I want to learn from. And the company that I'm learning from the most right now is Tom's, which was Tom's Shoes, and now they're moving into, they've done sunglasses, now they're moving into coffee. And what they're able to do, completely change, and think of coffee is like so done to death. And I think they're going to do incredible things in that space by, to Will's point, tying it to the community in a way that consumers start to care. It's the new version of marketing. It's the new version of connecting to your customer. And I think Tom's is, I have no affiliation. They are, Blake especially, they're a genius company and something to look out for.
Nancy and Abe?
I think food and looking at how we serve food to kids is actually incredible. So I know you talked a little bit about the kitchen community and the learning gardens, but I think if schools and all schools are able to build their own garden and teach the kids how to harvest all of the vegetables that they're eating, that's incredible. And if we can do that for all the schools, and I think that's probably your goal, to do it across the entire United States, that's going to change so many industries, food industry, logistics industry. Instead of having to figure out how to supply all these foods to all these different schools, now you just have it within the community. You're having all your foods sourced within one community. It changes, it's a total game changer. People are becoming healthier, kids are getting educated about healthy eating early on. I think that's really exciting.
And I didn't pay her to do that.
Abe, in 5 to 10 years, who are going to be your biggest winners? Or what
well, I'm a little biased,
own?
so I will pick some of our companies. But I mean, I would say the sharing economy, so Airbnb, obviously becoming a huge company. I think in 5 years they will be even larger. Logistics companies like Uber, which we're very bullish on, of course. And then, machine learning and AI companies like Vicarious, who just raised a bunch of money about a month ago, are kind of in my boat. And also, Facebook, I wouldn't normally, probably a year ago I wouldn't have said that, but I think we can argue on the price that they acquired WhatsApp for, and that's great, but the power that they have through that and the acquisition of the Oculus is going to, I think, change communication and change, obviously gaming and entertainment, but that's going to be a wholly disruptive company on its own.
Is there one company you guys don't own that you wish you did or aren't invested in that you wish you did?
I love SpaceX, and I love Tesla, but we were a little late on those. So.
Do you have any ticker symbols for us?
All right, we have 18 seconds, which unfortunately I don't think is enough time for another question. If anybody has any final short thoughts.
Disruption is fun.
All right. Well, thank you
All the
guys.
cool kids are doing it.
Yeah, they are. Thank you guys so much.